Let's move on and say hello to our next set of guests, Subhrakant Panda, who is the former president of FICCI, as well as the managing director of IMFA, as well as Subhash Garg, former finance secretary. Both of them have joined in. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us. Mr. Garg, let me open with you. I think, the narrative, the discussions here have now moved to asking the question, will policy, if we work with the assumption that N.D.A.I is coming back a third term, will policies and priorities be any different if the number stands at 300 and not 350, 360, which the polls were predicting? Your sense?
So my sense is that one big message which the N.D.A government and the Prime Minister Modi should be reading is that there is a real distress in people, whether it's coming out from the unemployment or lower income, lower consumption, as you see it in the data reflected very clearly. Only the investment is going in big way, and that investment was also funded largely from the borrowed money, whether it's housing or in the corporate sector. So that message, if the government reads, and I am assuming at this moment that the government will be again that of the BJP led by Prime Minister Modi. It may not hold that way as we go along, but at this moment I'm assuming that. So if that message is read, then I believe that there would be change in the fundamental policy construct which the government has been following for last 3 years, which is high capex led, lower on the employment and wages story, partly supplemented by the Labharti, the giveaways in the form of free food, free fertilizer, etc.
Yeah.
So that might change if the message is read rightly.
Okay.
But if that message is not read that way, and it is taken as confirmation of what the strategy in N.D.A. 2, that is 2019-24, which is very different from N.D.A. 1, which is 2014 to 2019, then much of what we saw in last 3 years might continue. More capex.
No, absolutely, sir. And thank you for raising that point. That's a very important point that you raised. And Prashant, it just gets me thinking, we've all spent the better part of the last 1 year talking about premiumization trends, talking about, booming consumption at the top of the pyramid, those houses, in NCR selling for 6-7 CR, and the struggle at the bottom of the pyramid. And perhaps some of that could be maybe resonating in some of the numbers that we're seeing specifically in the north.
Surabhi, you're young. I have gone through the India Shining campaign, and perhaps there are shades of it.
But I started my career when India Shining happened, so I have very good memory of 2004.
But I'll tell you one thing though. We were in the morning when we started, we were saying that by 10 o'clock, 10:30, 11, it'll all be clear. I don't think this will be clear by 1 o'clock, I think even 2 p.m. We'll have to wait till 2 p.m. to get a real sense of what the numbers actually will look like. So
we have egg on our face, but a lot of people have much more egg on their faces.
Yeah. Actually, let me just put one question to, just one more follow-up to Mr. Garg. Mr. Garg, it's interesting what you say because, as Surabhi was also pointing out that many in stock markets who invest, they've also been saying, well, maybe it's time to look at things which have not done well, and things which have not done well are things which is, mass-oriented, not at the premium end. If you were to look ahead, what could be, not populist, but from a government sort of policy perspective, top-down, what could be the focus? Some have suggested it could be, housing, right? Electricity, Nal, Jal, all of that has been the focus over the last couple of years. Could housing come back in a big way as a theme, a macro theme? What's your sense?
See, housing has been the big theme of the government already in the second term and as well as in the first term. It's only in the last year, if you look at very closely, there was some momentum loss in the government program on housing, especially on the rural housing. That I found was a little surprising because the implementation record of this government has been phenomenal, but in the housing sector, it looked that the thing was not doing that well. Similarly, the Nal se Pani, that Har Ghar Jal, Har Ghar Jal and Har Ghar Nal program seem to have actually sputtered in the difficult areas where it was really intended to bring benefit, and we had still about 5 crore to 6 crore connections which were not delivered, which was otherwise promised. So the implementation of these populist, I wouldn't say them completely populist, they actually serviced the real basic needs of the people. And in the first tenure, the record in electricity, toilets, housing was phenomenally good.
Yep.
But in the second term, that record was not that good. So if you read that, that's a very direct way of reading. Instead, what you saw was very high expansion on fertilizer subsidies, food subsidies being given away completely 100%, which was not at all required. And in between, for about 2 years, you had raised 5 kg to 10 kg.
Yep.
So those were more direct populist
The point is
measures.
taken, sir. I agree with you, but I would assume that there was a logic in saying that 10 kilos was, a bit too much, and also grains stocks were depleting after the Ukraine war. I guess there was an emergency which the government had to address. It was an El Nino year as well. So with the higher prices, the procurement wasn't as successful. But we'll come to that. We have the industry veteran, Subhrakant Panda, also with us. Mr. Panda, thank you very much for your patience. Are you expecting tweaks in policies?
Look, good morning, first of all. And let me put it this way. I think from an industry perspective, the view is actually more of the same, irrespective of which government comes to power. And having said that, it does look like at the moment that the N.D.A.I will be back in power, and therefore it should be the Prime Minister continuing in his present role. But there is a lot to be done to cement India's progress, what we have gained in the last decade or more in terms of becoming a viable alternative as a manufacturing destination, not just the backroom office of the world, but also the factory of the world. So therefore, there is a lot of work to be done. I think primarily focused around strengthening manufacturing competitiveness. There are many steps that need to be taken in this regard to again build on the efforts of improving enhancing the ease of doing business and reducing the cost of doing business. But a lot of work needs to be done in that regard. And besides that, I think there are measures which can be taken, such as, in my opinion, initiating GST 2.0, because GST was obviously the most significant reform which this country has seen. But I think the time has now come to further simplify it in a revenue-neutral manner, which will build on what it has achieved, which is to dismantle the internal barriers to trade as well as greater formalization of the economy. And one of the success areas which has been the PLI schemes, I think in a considered manner, the incoming government should look at broadening the scope, but more important.
Okay. Yeah, Mr. Panda, we have just lost your voice. We'll come back to you, but I think the point he's making is well taken. That there were many sensible schemes and they should and would continue. Yeah. See, let's look at the reality. If it is going to be 300 out of 543, it's a comfortably stable government. It's very good for the citizens of India if there is a government which, regardless of its stability, has to look over its shoulder to see that it is not losing it. So we are actually in for a much better situation if this tally continues. A government that doesn't feel it can get away with mistakes, that it can get away with, the odd MP who is misbehaving and is not brought to book soon enough. It's actually a very good tally if it comes this way. We have a stable government, we have continuity of policy, but we have a government that feels a little more responsive, would be the way I look at it. But the bigger thing is, will they now have the courage to go with one election, for the state and centre elections together, the one that is, very much on the anvil? Shireen, before I come to you for just a minute, let me get a very quick answer from Mr. Garg. Mr. Garg, do you think that one nation, one election gets a little postponed now?
I don't think that's even constitutionally and legally possible, practically impossible. I don't think that's going to happen.
All right. Well, I just feel that politically the BJP may feel that this is not the right time. Over to you,